Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Fair Territory. We're coming to you live from the general managers meetings in Las Vegas. Before we get started, I want to mention Veterans Day and thank all the veterans, of course, for their service. I know this is the day we always thank them and take a day to do that, but really it's every day that we should be thanking the veterans. Their sacrifice cannot even be described in words. So happy Veterans Day to all. Now, as for baseball, it's been quite an interesting week already because of something that happened off the field. And of course, I'm talking about the indictments of the Guardians pitchers, Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz, on charges they took bribes from sports bettors to throw specific pitches that would trigger prop bets, basically doing things that were anti-integrity, if you want to call it that. We've talked a lot about what this means, about the gambling aspect, about all the companies, including ours, including everyone I work for that is in partnership with gambling companies, baseball's partnership with gambling companies. We've also learned yesterday, that Major League Baseball has worked with the sports books to institute a $200 limit on pitch level micro bets and to also exclude them from parlays. Obviously, the idea is to kind of prevent this from happening in the future, or at least take a step to help prevent this from happening. What we haven't talked much about is the actual effect on the Guardians themselves as a baseball team. You see there this story from Zach Mizell, really good story explaining everything that's in the indictment and all that it came to pass with these two pitchers. The Guardians last year, remember, they did not have these two guys for their stretch run. Luis Ortiz did not pitch after June 27th. Emmanuel Clase did not pitch after July 26th. They both were placed on non-disciplinary paid leave while the Major League Baseball investigation was going on. What happened? The Guardians did not fall apart without one of their starting pitchers and their premier closer. They went 19-4 down the stretch to win the AL Central in shocking fashion. Now they lost to the Tigers in the wild card round. Now the question becomes, all right, what about this season? What do they do about these guys? I assume, but perhaps I should not assume, that they will remain on non-disciplinary paid leave. That's a problem for the Guardians, who are a low-budget team, and Clase is due $6.4 million in 2026. Ortiz would be right around the minimum salary, $780,000. He is not yet eligible for arbitration. The Guardians certainly can use that money. My understanding is, as of right now, that money is not available to them, but we should learn more about that in the coming days. So we'll have to see how that all plays out for the Guardians. Clearly, they can figure things out either way, but if they got some clarity on what these guys will be paid or not paid, it certainly would help them as they go forward in the offseason. Now, also in the AL Central, I wrote a notes column today, my first one of the offseason, and I led with the Twins. And the Twins are an interesting team because if you look at them and you go back to the deadline, they traded everybody. Well, pretty much everybody. Their entire bullpen for sure, and a number of others. So the assumption would be, well, of course, they would continue on this course and trade Pablo Lopez, and more importantly, trade Joe Ryan, who was in demand at the deadline, but the Twins did not get an offer they liked. And yet, there is another way for them to go. And in talking to some people yesterday, I learned that at least this way is under consideration. And that way is to compete. It's to keep those two guys and build around them in what is, every year, a winnable AL Central. The Twins are not like the Rockies, kind of bereft of talent. They've got talent. Byron Buxton, Ryan, Lopez, some younger players around them. Royce Lewis, if he ever stays healthy. They're not a team that is necessarily going to be an awful team next year. If they actually built around these guys, they might be interesting. Now, remember, they were not sold as they wanted to be, or at least the Pohlad family intended them to be, for $1.7 billion. They did not get that price, and ultimately the family took on two minority investors. It seemed for the main reason of paying down their debt, which was around $425 million. Well, how about putting some money into the team? That might be an interesting reversal, especially when you've got a new manager, Derek Shelton, and especially when you've also alienated your fans the past several years. So this is something to keep in mind. I'm not saying the Twins are going to go one way or the other. My understanding is they don't have a direction yet from ownership on just how much they could spend, but that's going to be something to watch. Another team in a similar boat, another team with a new manager, the Texas Rangers. Skip Schumacher is their new manager. They're coming off a disappointing season, 81-81. We know that their payroll is not going to be as high. They pushed it after winning the World Series, actually to win the World Series, and then after that, they're going to go backwards a little bit. They can do some things to lower the payroll and create some flexibility for some offseason pursuits. They've got Ortiz Clase, who is a potential non-tender. They've got Jonah Heim, who is a potential non-tender. Garcia is at about $12.6 million, I believe. Heim, $6 million. I've got this in the column. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. So most likely one of them will be non-tendered. Can they go further? I don't know that they would go further. Could you trade Marcus Semien and save some money that way? I don't know that anyone would want Semien. He's in decline. He's 35. But this is a team that's going to face some interesting decisions. Again, because they have a new manager, you would think they don't simply want to go backwards. In fact, they're a very competitive group. Chris Young, their general manager, former pitcher, he wants to get back into the mix. So the Rangers are going to be an interesting team to watch as well. They need another starting pitcher, a back-end guy most likely. They will need a catcher if they non-tender Heim. They obviously need to fix their bullpen and rebuild that, and maybe they'll need a right-handed hitting outfielder as well. Can they do all that within the financial constraints they're going to be under? Well, we're going to find out. And finally, in this segment, I want to talk about Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks announced his retirement yesterday, and he is such an interesting player in so many regards. First of all, congratulations to Kyle on a tremendous career. He's a guy that my producer Jeremy Meyer pointed out today would maybe not get signed as an amateur if he was coming up through the ranks. He didn't throw hard. He is a guy that thrived on pitching, not just on velocity. And today, of course, the great emphasis is on velocity and making your breaking pitches spin as fast as they can and break as hard as they can. Kyle Hendricks was not that guy, and yet he had a wonderful career. Of course, it was highlighted by the 2016 World Series, in which he started games 3 and 7 for the Cubs and allowed only one earned run in 9 innings. You see there, Patrick Mooney, he describes Kyle Hendricks as an under-the-radar prospect out of Dartmouth who developed into a World Series champion and one of the most consequential Cubs pitchers ever. And he's exiting the game the way he came in, with zero fanfare. Kyle Hendricks, one of the more modest guys you will ever meet. He was never about himself. He was always about the team. That is why he was a beloved teammate. And you go back to that 2016 World Series, well, Game 3, 4 1/3 scoreless innings. Cubs lost that one 1-0. If you remember, they fell behind 3-1 in this World Series before winning the final 3 with Kyle Hendricks starting Game 7, pitching 4 2/3 innings, allowing 2 runs, just 1 was earned. The Cubs, of course, went on to that dramatic 8-7 victory with the rain delay, the Jason Hayward speech, and they broke the Guardians' hearts. They were then the Indians, and that World Series was so meaningful for so many because of the fact the Cubs had not won since 1908, not 2008, and the Guardians have not won and still have not won since 1945. So again, great job his whole career to Kyle Hendricks. Congratulations on your retirement once more, and you were a pleasure to watch, man. A pleasure to cover, a pleasure to watch. We'll be back with the Inside Dish after this.
This episode of FT is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Give me an example in Pennsylvania, Kratz.
Right down the street from my house, the Tap House. Not only is it an awesome place to hang out, get your beers, get your drinks, whatever it is, but you know what? The company has the simplicity of Square, and they give back to the community with 10% of all the proceeds that they bring in going back to community projects.
I love it. Sports and sports bars are so good at bringing together local communities, and you can actually take this ad as an excuse to go support your local spot and have yourself a day or a weekend in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. These businesses are what make the neighborhood the neighborhood. So visit square.com/go/foul to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Again, that's square.com/go/foul to learn more.
Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk about maybe something I've written, a trend in the game, or sometimes a combination of both. And that is what I'm going to do today. On Friday, I wrote a column about the managerial hirings, all that we've seen so far, the traditional, the non-traditional. And in that column, I questioned some of the teams for maybe getting too cute, trying to be too creative in outsmarting their opposition and figuring out the next big thing. Now, this column got a lot of reaction, as columns often do. That's kind of the idea when you write something. And I wrote it because it was bugging me, what was going on. And sometimes the best columns come from when something is just bothering you. Now, what was this about? It was about the hirings of 4 managers from non-traditional backgrounds. Of course, Tony Vitello, college coach from Tennessee, being first and foremost among them. He is a guy who has never been in professional baseball. Then there was Blake Butera at 33, the youngest manager to take over a team since 1972. He's a guy who's never managed above A ball, never been in the major leagues either. And then there was Kurt Suzuki with the Angels and Craig Stammen with the Padres, former players, guys who were serving as special assistants with their teams, but never coached or managed. Now, there were 4 other hires, or have been 4 other hires, from the more traditional path that we normally see, from coaching staffs in Major League Baseball or previous managers, guys who are getting a second chance. 3 of those guys qualified in that regard. Skip Schumacher with the Rangers, Walt Weiss with the Braves, and Derek Shelton with the Twins. And then there's Craig Albanaz with the Orioles. He was a bench coach with the Guardians for 2 years under Stephen Vogt. And of course, before that, a coach with the Giants as well. So that's the traditional path. So I wrote this questioning the new ones. And of course, the Rockies still need to hire a manager, and their hire as a president of baseball operations, Paul DePodesta, was perhaps the most surprising hire of all, considering that DePodesta has been out of baseball for about a decade. He was in the front office of the NFL's Cleveland Browns. So you might ask, and people did ask, Ken, why are you all hot and bothered about this? Anytime you hire a manager, it's a risk. And I thought about this after I wrote the column and gave it some more thought. And I thought back to my own career and my own start in baseball writing. And I was hired at age 24 without any experience covering Major League Baseball on a regular basis by the Baltimore Evening Sun. The sports editor was Jack Gibbons, and he took a chance on me, much as these teams are taking a chance on these managers. And basically his thought was that I could grow into the job. And I guess that's what happened. I would hope that people think that's what happened. I've been doing it long enough now, but at the same time, I still see this situation in baseball as different. And I see it as different because at that time when I was hired, while yes, I'm sure Jack Gibbons snubbed a lot of more qualified candidates, those guys were getting jobs elsewhere. It was not a problem. There were a lot of baseball writing jobs, and this was kind of an unusual circumstance. Today in baseball, when the unconventional hires are made, it's not so unusual. We've seen that. And my concern, again, is that teams get too cute. They try to show how smart they are. And we see this not just in their hirings. We see this with player acquisition. We see this with in-game strategy. And yes, we see this in the way they go about picking their new managers and sometimes their new coaches as well. And here's the thing. The managing job is extremely difficult. It's a lot harder than being a 24-year-old baseball writer. It's a lot bigger risk to take a chance in a multi-million-dollar business with someone who has not done the job before. Not quite the same as what I was experiencing or what the Baltimore Evening Sun was experiencing when they hired me in 1987. So during the postseason, when I was with the Blue Jays for the entire postseason, Division Series, LCS, World Series, their manager, John Schneider, spoke often. We met with him every day as a broadcast group, and he spoke often about how much he has learned in his time as a manager. He was a minor league manager for 8 years. He was a major league coach for 3+ seasons. He followed that traditional path. And yet, when he got the job, he still had a long way to go to become the manager he is today, and potentially the American League Manager of the Year, which will be named tonight. And Schneider spoke about how he needed to evolve, learn from his mistakes, learn to adjust to situations, exercise feel, read, and react. He's done a better job of that than he did earlier. All of these managers who are coming in for the first time, they're going to need how to learn to do the job, first of all, and they're going to need to refine themselves over a matter of time as well. It's not easy. So that's my concern. Now, the same thing, or at the same time, the other part of this is that, again, as I mentioned, quality people are getting overlooked. We have David Ross and Brandon Hyde, guys who deserve a second chance. Were they great managers in their first shots? Maybe not. But we've seen managers grow a lot in their second jobs. We also see and know managers in minor leagues, managers even coaches in the major leagues, these guys are waiting and they're waiting for their chances and they feel, hey, what about me? So it's a complicated discussion. And for all I know, maybe all of these guys that I'm talking about will prove major successes. When I wrote this column, I cited my original column when Aaron Boone was hired by the Yankees. And I said that maybe I was being too alarmist in that column because I was critical of that hire. I don't recall too many people being critical of it, but I was, because he had no coaching or managing experience. Obviously, Aaron Boone has proven to be a great success. I was wrong on him, and I said as much in the column. And if I'm wrong on all these first-time managers, I'll be happy to say as much again. But I just have a hard time that all of them, a hard time believing that all of them are going to succeed. In my view, experience in this position still matters. Well, at least it should. All right, back with Grillin Ken right after this.
Hey, an easy way to support the show and wear super comfy clothing is by heading to foulterritoryshop.com. Yes, foulterritoryshop.com is loaded with Foul Territory gear and lots of Fair Territory gear. If you want to give some love to Ken and Alana, go check out a hat, a t-shirt, and a lot more. Coffee mug in the morning? foulterritoryshop.com is the spot. Hey, when you get a chance, subscribe to Foul Territory on YouTube. We are getting very close to 300,000 subscribers on the channel and love all of them. So we'd love you to join us on that channel as we break down everything going on across the sport. It is baseball the way it should be covered at Foul Territory. Give us a sub.
Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where I answer your questions. Let's get right to them. First one comes from Richard Proctor, who asks, which team do you think is most likely to part with their prospects in order to better their major league roster? Always a good question, and one, Richard, that is kind of difficult to answer because I don't know what teams exactly are thinking. But I would say this. The Mets are a team that have built their farm system in recent years, especially under David Stearns. They're in a position now where they can make some trades. The Dodgers have a strong farm system. They certainly can make some trades. But what would be more intriguing would be if we saw teams like, for instance, the Marlins and the Pirates do some things to better themselves by trading from their depth of prospects. And I do believe that is possible. Yesterday, in talking to some people here, just the first day of the GM meetings. Actually, it wasn't even the first day. People were just getting in. I heard that the Marlins and Pirates are telling agents, hey, we'd like to be aggressive. We'd like to spend a little bit. Now, that can be in free agency, or it can be in the matter of taking on salaries in trades. So I don't know the exact answer to your question, Richard, but I do expect that we're going to see some of this kind of activity, and not just from the big spending teams that have tons of prospects. You may see it from some other clubs as well. Next question. This one comes from Peter Ross, 1907. Peter asks, what do you think the Yankees are doing this offseason? Starting pitcher would be one thing. And Joel Sherman wrote an interesting column in the New York Post today about how while the Yankees will have Rodon coming back and they'll have Cole coming back, at some point, maybe even early in the season, they need to protect themselves. They need to get another starter. Max Fried's coming off a big workload. They've got obviously a good group, but you always need more. So I expect starting pitching to be one thing. And then the outfield, going to be really interesting. So Trent Grisham got the qualifying offer. We don't know if he's going to accept or not. Obviously, if he accepts, that's one spot. They do want Bellinger back. They've talked about that. But Kyle Tucker is someone who might fit even better than Bellinger in some ways. Chris Kirshner of The Athletic has written about that. He believes that Tucker is a better fit. Either way, one or both of those guys probably will be a pursuit of the Yankees. depending on Grisham. Now, they've still got Jason Dominguez, of course, and they've still got that Aaron Judge character. But I do expect them to be somewhat active in the outfield. And then, of course, bullpen, Devin Williams is a free agent. Luke Weaver is a free agent. They're going to have to do some things there. So the Yankees, like always, as always, will be busy this offseason. All right, next question. From Pilot 2950, even though they made the playoffs last season, do you think I can't read this, hold on. Help me out here. Let's see. Oh, there it is. The Guardians will trade Kwan or other big pieces. All right. Steven Kwan is a guy who was in serious demand at the deadline, and the Dodgers were one of the teams trying to get him, and I expect those teams will renew their pursuits. The Guardians are a team that does make trades, but other teams will tell you they're really difficult to deal with. They set their price, and they don't come off it. People can be critical of that, but that's the way they operate, and they're pretty successful doing it. They did trade Bieber at the deadline last offseason. A little bit of a different case. He wasn't active for them at that moment. Steven Kwan certainly was. I don't expect that they're going to trade Kwan. They view him, I believe, as something of a centerpiece, a key part of what they do. But they're going to have to be creative and flexible, as they always are, in how they reshape their roster. They need offense. They need outfielders. We know that, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to go about getting it. All right, next question. Let's see what this is. This is from Jim Huerta, who asks, what's more realistic from the CBA? Ha ha. A cap floor or a massive restructuring of revenue sharing? Great question. I still believe a cap floor, salary cap, and a salary floor is not realistic. The players will fight it. It will require the league to miss time and eat into the 2027 season. And as successful as the sport is right now, as much of a positive wave it is riding, that to me does not seem to be the best solution. Now, restructuring revenue sharing is one way to obviously address the inequities that exist in revenues between the teams. And that's something I've talked about a lot. We've all talked about it. It's real. It's a problem for the sport, and it's getting to be a bigger problem each year as the Dodgers go this way and other teams stay at this level down here. Restructuring revenue sharing is one solution. You can also do some things to enhance competitive balance in other ways. More draft picks for low revenue teams. You can also do some other things as well. It's kind of eluding me right now, but I've got some ideas about what this sport could do to benefit those clubs. And there are ways to go about it. You can tax the teams more heavily at the top of the luxury tax scale. There are all kinds of levers that can be pulled here short of a salary cap. And if that is necessary to keep the sport going and make it fairer, to me, that is the way the sport should go. All right, one more, I think, maybe two before we go. What team is more likely to trade for Skubal? As of right now, JJ Nolasco, I would say no team is likely to trade for Skubal. My understanding is the Tigers want to keep Skubal, and while teams will come at them and while they will listen, it's their job to listen, their idea is to compete next year and be a really good team around him. They've been a really good team with him, obviously. Now, do I agree with that idea? I'm torn. Because on one hand, if you trade Skubal, you get something in return that will be greater than the draft pick you might get after making him a qualifying offer next offseason. On the other hand, trading a pitcher who likely will be a two-time Cy Young winner, and you're kind of ripping the fabric of the team apart at a time when you don't necessarily need to do that, when you have a chance to go back to the playoffs for a third straight year and win with Tarik Skubal. That seems to be the Tigers' preference. We'll see how hard they get pushed. You're asking which team would push the hardest. I would expect the Mets would be one, badly need a starting pitcher, and the Dodgers another. But because Skubal has only 1 year of club control remaining, who knows what the returns might be. The return for Corbin Burns that the Brewers got 2 years ago was good. Was it awesome? No. So this is a situation that will play out this offseason. But again, as of right now, my expectation is he stays. All right, one more question before we go. Let's see what we got. JJ Nolasco again. What do the Pirates need to do to be successful next year? I want to see Skeens in the postseason. A lot of us want to see that. And what the Pirates need to do is find some offense. Balance their roster. They are good with pitching. They are really good with starting pitching. They've got depth there. They can trade a starting pitcher, not Skeens, but another starting pitcher, maybe Mitch Keller, maybe someone else, to get the bats that they need. They've resisted doing that. And I understand you've built this pitching. You don't want to break it up when it's so fragile. But at the same time, the Pirates obviously need to get more offense. Their general manager, Ben Cherington, Pirates owner, Bob Nutting, kept him. Well, now he's got to do some things to improve this team in a way that, like the Tigers with Scooble, you would want to take advantage of having Skeens, and you've got him for longer than the Tigers do with Scooble. All right, that is it for today's show. I want to thank everyone for watching, for listening. Foul Territory is coming up. It's Jace Tingler, new Giants coach, Chris Kirshner of The Athletic, Ryan Divish from the Seattle Times, and we're going to join Scott, AJ, and Eric Kratz. Fair Territory returns Thursday again from the GM meetings, live at 12:30 Eastern. I'll talk to you then. Thanks, everyone.